Welcome to the Hawks Nest live stream show. My name is Brandon Kane, and I do thank you for tuning on in today. Hopefully you're having yourself a great day at that. As today we're going to be covering a little bit of a different topic. We've been looking at players, we've been looking at schemes, we've been looking at new coaches, we've been looking at how this whole thing is going to interwork and come together, coalesce all together into a great final form that hopefully has our Seattle Seahawks making some real noise this upcoming season. A part of that is going to be how fast the West Coast offense can be onboarded here by Klint Kubiak. He did a very good job, not last year, first year with the New Orleans Saints, coming in and being able to get this thing instituted really quickly. But I know that there are some fans out there, especially some of our younger fans, that may not as be well aware of the West Coast offense. And this is more of just kind of a show today as a little bit for myself, I would say, because I love talking about this offense. I love talking about how it's evolved and moved through the years to where we find it right now with Kubiak, who just kind of continues to push that ball forward in his own unique way, building on the legacy of so many coaches that have come down the line of this who have done the same. And it is a different offense than the type of offense we've been used to here in recent years. That's really why I want to highlight this as much as anything else. We talked a little bit about this when Klint Kubiak got hired and about some of the changes that were, at play. So my cat's going to lose her mind. Sorry, one sec here. So we've got, first, this offense is with the Bill Walsh. This is where this thing starts. And I'm going to just take you through a little bit of, we're going to go a little wide range on this one today. And I want to go bit by bit through this offense in order to kind of show you guys where it's come from, what it's gone through its iterations, including through here in Seattle. And then as well, then where it's kind of heading towards and what's the next kind of adjustment Kubiak has kind of implemented on his side of it. But it's a really fun offense. And it's an offense, as I said, that's very different than what we've run here recently with Coach Carroll. It's not that Coach Carroll hasn't had some, stuff built within that has West Coast elements into it as offense. Jeremy Bates certainly had some of that stuff. Waldron certainly had some of that stuff. These guys had it baked already in there, even though their offense might be leaning to other places. Even a Grubb with his air raid is going to have some West Coast stylings within it. And many of the offenses throughout the NFL, of course, are really hybridized in that way. But you still do lean towards where you're trying to go philosophy-wise from an offense. And that some of the stuff that was built up by Bill Walsh back in the day in the 80s on this still carry through today. You can still hear from all these coaches, be it a Holmgren or be it a Mike Shanahan or any of these former West Coast coaches, and they will tell you that when they look at these offenses today, yes, there's been some modernizations and there's definitely changes and there's iterations and all that, but it also is still at the bones that West Coast offense and what drove it. And I don't know if that at the bones throughout most of Coach Carroll's time here, we were really running kind of a West Coast style offense. It was a little bit more of, we're going to hammer the A, the B gap. We're going to go really on the power runs. And then we're going to try to kind of hit you over the top. Russell Wilson with his magicianship in the backfield and his ability to get away from people back there. That was really more of kind of your styling of offense. And I would argue that it was almost in a lot of ways completely opposite as an offensive styling to the West Coast offense. It was imperfect, but not imperfect in a bad way, just that it didn't hold to being precise and perfect in how you run your route running as that being the thing that sort of carried the day of those offenses. And that's what this offense is about. It's rhythm, it's timing, it's perfection. It gets down to the detail-centric nature of things to where you put this step to that step, this hand to that hand. And I think a little bit under the prior offenses and how we've run it. And again, you don't have to do the West Coast offense to be effective. You can run the Carroll offense and be effective in how they did it. It's just a different style as much as anything else. I think we had a lot more of, for instance, when it came to throwing the football from Russell Wilson's standpoint during that time period, Coach Carroll, I think, coached him pretty heavily at that point on two different things that are very much different from what you get in the West Coast offense. Number one, the targeting of the middle of the field. Seattle was, over the last 10 years, one of the teams that was probably least at targeting the middle of the field under Coach Carroll's time. Carroll did that on purpose because risk averse, doesn't want as many turnovers, get more turnovers between the hash marks. So I want you to try to avoid that. We're going to stay outside on it. And the second thing that was really big that stood out to me with Coach Carroll and his time here offensively, and specifically I think his real effect on the offense, was that he wanted Russell Wilson at times to see it there, see it open, see the guy actually making the break in separation. Don't throw with the anticipation that the break's going to happen. Actually see it so that you can ensure on the throw that you do make that there's not a chance the route's going to get undercut. You're going to get less interceptions for it. We come back along to same thing for the middle of the field. All this is informed from Coach Carroll's perspective by wanting to avoid the turnovers, wanting to play a clean game on that because he thinks whoever wins the turnover war is going to tend to win the football game. And he tends to be pretty right about that. The West Coast offense is not going to be as worried about that. In fact, targeting the middle of the field is where a lot of the places that they're going to live on the football field. The risk-adverse stuff as far as not throwing with anticipation, this is an offense heavily built on throwing with anticipation. Where it came from initially, as we start out kind of the history of this, is that this goes back to Bill Walsh with the Cleveland Browns, where they had a real hyper-talented quarterback. Could have been even, according to the way they talk about this guy, could have been an all-timer out there at Cleveland. But then he had a shoulder injury. Shoulder injury ended up knocking out his career. So they had to bring up a backup quarterback. And so the offense was sort of forged out of necessity for the fact that you had to have a backup quarterback still be able to operate their offense, which is a little bit more passing based at that time. Yet he didn't have the arm of the prior guy. He was a backup quarterback. It's kind of one of the reasons why, if you've noticed, the West Coast offense has had a pretty good history of having the backup quarterbacks come in and be able to play pretty competently, because it's a very friendly offense to backup quarterbacks to allow them to succeed. A lot of easy completions in there. A lot of, as long as you're on your P's and Q's from a detail standpoint, you're going to be able to make some completions and move the football. And so this was determined out of that. Walsh then went to the Niners, of course, and then was able with Joe Montana to get him in there. And they went there and went on that dynasty run. Steve Young came in at the end. And Bill Walsh came in and really instituted this offense, which was just so detail driven in its approach to things. It was so much more of these teams across the league, offensive wise, were more big picture, and the little details didn't matter as much. You got into the details, but I mean, he would get into the finite details. And to give you guys a little bit of a look at this, I'm going to be playing some little clips up as we go through on this a little bit. I want to play you this little clip. It's a couple minutes long, but I want you guys to just listen to how Bill talks about the details of this offense and how he's manipulating defenders, because that's also what this offense is trying to do. It's manipulating defenders. It's purposefully getting an opening. It's not simply saying, hey, you go get open. It's saying we're going to create this opening in the route as long as you run it correctly by how we're running the route combinations on the backside and how we're trying to manipulate defenders. So this is a cool little cut up from him giving a little seminar on coaching. And he breaks down one play, and I think just off of this one play breakdown, you can get a really good idea with him on just kind of the flavor of what I'm talking about, of how, imagine this, taking this from sort of the archaic Stone Ages to modernizing it in his terminology and how he talked about it. And again, a lot of this stuff still does carry on through today. I wanted to show this play in particular because there's one little spot that I think could really be impactful to our Hawks within this particular little play that he's breaking down. But let's listen to Bill on this, and let me play that cut for you guys.
For the outside receiver to their side. We've all seen it. These two men would be responsible.
Hold on, let me get this right.
For the outside receiver to their side. For the outside receiver to their side.
Oh, hold on. Sorry, folks. I had this right. And
for the outside receiver to their side. We've all seen it.
Okay. Let's try this again. We'll start this from the start.
For the outside receiver to their side. We've all seen it. These two men would be responsible for the tight end. If you released inside, he'd cover it. If you released outside, he'd cover it. He'd go to the hook. So that's a simple defense that people run. And typically, the weak side backer would blitz. This linebacker would have this back, unless you broke to the outside, then he'd turn him over to him. If you broke the inside, he'd keep him and wall him off so we couldn't get past him. So a very fundamental defense. We brought our tight end, John Taylor, to this position, so this man couldn't hold him up. They don't practice against that look. Teams don't, especially when they think it's going to be a pass. They practice against the split end. So this man, one of their best players, was ready to rotate. He was ready to come forward against nobody. He sort of isolated. Then, naturally, they thought Jerry Rice was going to get the ball. So away in motion, he went across the formation, which stretched him and widened him. John Frank's job was to release inside and drive at this safety and pivot hook in front of him to hold him. Jerry's job is to somehow get past this man trying to hold him up and get into this position, forcing this man to come over to him. Roger and Craig's job was to run a curl pattern right here to occupy him. Tom Rasmussen's job was to widen, force him to go to the hook zone, keep him where he belongs. John Taylor's job was to release outside, not out, force this guy to keep going, and then go right back up inside. Joe's job was to take 5 big steps, sit on it, looking at Roger to hold him up, Jerry waving his arms to pull him wide, John making an out move to hold him, and right there we hit. Touchdown pass for the World Championship.
Cool little play there on that where you get the breakdown a little bit of what he's talking about. You heard him mention Montana on the 5-step drop. This was really a time to me where he really reinforced the refinement of the footwork of quarterbacks and really started to lock that in a major way where it had not been before. The 3-step drops, the 5-step drops. There are even points within their offense where a lot of times you'll hear a quarterback breakdown play and they go, oh, there was a hitch in his throw there. Got to get that hitch removed from that drop back there. Walsh and a lot of how he created what he created was to include the hitch. 3 steps and a hitch, now you make your throw. The extra hitch gives the receiver just that extra beat of time for him to complete that route and to run it. It is all on that precise sort of set of timing. And the one route you saw them complete that to, as he was showing that with a little bit of the tight end there, coming up and running the stick nod is what it's called. He comes up, looks like he's starting out Brock route, and then he goes up and he goes and clears it. And the reason partly I want to show this play in addition to that is, can you just imagine Elijah Arroyo running that kind of stick nod route? Last year against the Miami Dolphins, we had one of the biggest plays of the year with DK Metcalf on an in-cutting stop and go route, essentially. Essentially stops it in and then just hits it and goes. And I wondered all through last year why we didn't run some more of that. I know it's a little bit hard at times because of the fact that you need the pass protection to hold up to be able to run those kind of plays. But that stick nod route, especially because a lot of what happens with the West Coast offense and why that route can be really effective is that they know you're running the shorter routes, does the defense. And now they want to start to try to squeeze those short routes up if they possibly can. And so they're going to get a little aggressive. They can be baited. They can take that false step forward and then you can beat them up over the top. And if you have a guy like Arroyo, who is as fast as he is getting into the second level and who can be a seam back breaker and how he is able to fly at his size, those are the kind of routes to me that could be really, really, really effective. But you could see in his breakdown of that, a lot of that was not just merely on, hey, you go bust out and go get open here, you go get open over here, you go get open over here. A lot of it was, okay, this guy's coming up here to hold this. Jerry's coming in motion. Jerry, your number 1 wide receiver, to essentially pull the 2 coverage, to pull the safety in the corner to him. He's baking that a little bit within it. They've got the fullback flattening out to pull the Mike linebacker and the other outside cornerback to the other side. This is the sort of manipulation you're trying to create in order to just create that free opening for the one other player. That's all part of the plan from the play, right how you start it to right how you kind of finish it, is that we're wanting to go here with the ball. We're going to manipulate the defense to go here with the ball, and post-snap, that's just what's going to happen. I think with Walsh, the big thing that he did as well that was a big difference, and which was sort of carried then by the people that came off of his branches from the tree there afterwards, was the passing to set up the run. In that a lot of how you had the football set up prior to Bill Walsh was that you're going to run the ball, and then you'll get teams really keyed in on run the ball, and now you can throw over the top and beat them over the top, a little bit like Carroll football bit. But then what happened here with Walsh is he came in and he said, you only get so many yards running the ball, but you get so many yards passing the ball, way more, sometimes double more, sometimes triple more. Why don't we throw the ball more? And we'll throw the ball, and then we'll cause defenses to have to play the pass, and now that will then open up the run. And so other coaches, like an Andy Reid, like a Mike Holmgren initially, this is what they did with it, is they took that and they continued kind of on the same styling. They leaned as much as ever into the passing game to kind of lead things up. They still found an effective ground game on the back of that, these coaches did, but it was the pass to then set up the run, coming from the era where it had been the run to set up the pass. Now, Mike Holmgren, of course, came to Seattle, and this was the last time, in my opinion, we really had as much of a pure West Coast offense as the kind that we're going to onboard right now. And Mike Holmgren came in with some high expectations. He had gotten to, of course, Green Bay, gotten them to the mountaintop, gotten them to back-to-back Super Bowls with Brett Favre there. And he came in and he was able to institute his system here and able to really create a very, very effective offense. They had a hell of a run there from, I think it was about 2001 to 2005, culminating in 2005, where you scored more points in the NFL than anybody else. So if you think this is an offense that can't put up points, or it's just sort of, well, it's about moving the chains and controlling the clock, and you'll score some points, but it's not going to explode. It's not going to light the scoreboard up. It doesn't have that potential. It moves too slow. It moves too methodically. Quite the opposite. Quite the opposite indeed. So you're able to be a number one offense in the NFL in that 2005 season. Of course, Mike wasn't able to really, sustain on the back of that. But this offense has been, if you look at all the offenses we've had here through Seattle's history here, the Knox offense, the Flores offense, the Dennis Erickson, who was supposed to be an offensive mastermind type, going down the field, your Grubbs, your Waldrons, anybody else, this has been the best offense you've ran in your Seattle Seahawks history. This is the one with the best track record. And you haven't, again, I don't think has run it as much purely as you possibly could have with that on that side of it. Now, there were other people on the branches that were taking this offense into a different direction as we get past in 2005, 2006. And notably, we're looking at Mike Shanahan, who obviously came before 2005. And he was a guy and got to the Broncos there where Elway had not been able to get to the mountaintop with championship-wise. He'd been to a couple Super Bowls, got spanked in every single Super Bowl that Elway went into. And so he was brought in, hopefully, to get him over the top with an aging Elway at this time. This was not prime Elway where he's able to go out there and be a high-volume passer and just light up. Still very skillful, still has the big arm, still has a little bit of mobility he could call upon at this time. But then in Mike now, we get to see a guy that's starting to kind of evolve the scheme a little bit. And what he adjusted to is two specific real things, in my opinion. He's going to keep all the passing attack structured stuff that's in there from Bill Walsh's designs of things, but he's going to institute what's called a wide zone, essentially. Stretch plays, those getting to the outside. And what he wanted to do was he wanted to utilize smaller, lighter, more mobile offensive linemen to be able to get these plays out to the edges. You got a lot at this time, it's again kind of adjusting off of what defenses are doing at this time, where defenses are really big up front. Everything's about size. So he brings in the guys that are mobile who can get to a spot that those big sizable guys can't get to, force those guys to run lateral after the snap rather than get upfield. And a lot of defenses weren't set up to do that. I mean, I can't undersell how sideways Shanahan caught defenses throughout the league in instituting this. And the guy that was the forerunner for instituting this was a man by the name of Alex Gibbs. He was going to be at one time an offensive line coach for your Hawks. Unfortunately, he passed. Carroll was looking to bring him in. So Carroll had an eye at one time to want to bring this very guy in. But this is the mastermind of the outside zone scheme and how it's blocked and how it was blocked at that time. And what you would do is you would essentially run your running back to the outside. He's got a three-way option as far as the different gaps he can choose to go to. So you sort of you turn your running back into a robot, I like to say. You kind of get him to where, look, you're not going to be able to freelance and go anywhere you want to go. You've got these three doors you can open, pick one of the doors and go and run like hell when you run through that door. So it simplified a little bit of the reads for running backs. And on the front side, you'd be blocking it kind of legitimately. You get some dual blocks and combo blocks and that type of thing. But on the back side, you'd then be looking to cut them. And cut him. So it would give you kind of two different options on the play for your running back, where he's got where the play's supposed to go, to the front side, to the outside zone. But if the backsides get the cut really good, they get those guys off their feet, and the front side guys over pursue too far, now that backside is opened up and you can take it and go right down the track. So I did I created a little video here today. I caught this video online. You guys are going to love this one. Again, it's a little short, just a 2-minute clip. But I wanted to get across a little bit of the kind of guy that this guy was. He was a very colorful personality. Was Gibbs, and how he went about his business. And I think you guys will like this little cut if I can get it right. Hopefully here. So this is Gibbs talking about his blocking scheme with a little bit of all 22 layered in.
So I'll just take you through the progression. Our left tackle and left guard are trying to make that read so that runner has no choice. Is everybody with me there? I'm going to make him cut behind that 5 because that 5 technique did not pinch down. Okay, and our center's going to reach the shade, and we're going to cut the back door. That right guard did not cut, and I promise you, he got chatted with very quickly off that backside. Now, Elway's keeper right here, I would blast. But if you'll see the wide guy on the outside over there, he did hang a hair, and that created the running lane that I'm trying to make happen, okay? And as I said, I got to get all these guys all these years, and if we got to slow down, we can. These are all run strong, You can see the left tackle and the left guard. I don't like the technique the left tackles use. That fat ass needs to get his feet moving better than that. But the right guard did a great job of making the runner read behind the nose. His read was to the end, to the nose. The quarterback is holding a weak safety. If you'll see that weak safety back there, he is afraid to leave because of the element of keeper. Now, this was a one-back set, but because it was a strong zone, it didn't matter to us. You see, the teaching is the same teaching, and it doesn't really matter how it happens. I'm not really interested in anything but just the teaching of the backside systems. Again, the right tackle, I think that's shitty. That just makes me sick and want to throw up. The right guard got in deep. The left guard forced the runner to run where he wanted, and I don't like the runner's pause. Okay, now this is MVP in the league, and I promise you, when he came off that field, I ripped his nuts because he cannot wait that long to make that cut. I can't block him long enough for that to happen. Now, when we run it into a reduction side, a lot of times stunts like that occur. We have all kind of concepts that we're teaching, and I know a lot of you would say, well, you can't just fall into that. Well, you don't. You got to work at that. But that system is devised. It's out of a two tight end element. We didn't get great cut by the backside tight end. The runner had a bounce read because his read told him, go out. That's one of the few times that the ball will actually do that in the system. The right guard's going to force it out. The left guard should cut. He did not cut. I guarantee he got ripped. The left tackle didn't have an angle to cut. It is no mystery what's happening back here to the backside of the defense. Now, he chose to go out because his read told him to. Had his read told him inside, the big play here would have been downhill. But you have to live with that world. If you've told him his read is the end man on the line of scrimmage, he clearly goes out. If his read were to jump out, then you would expect him back here where these three chops are. He bounced it to the top because that's what his read was. And you got to live with those. You got to say to yourself, well, now wait a minute, what is the best way for this to function? The cut on the back door by the fullback, the cut by the tight end, the guard should have cut right there. The left guard made the read go where the read ought to go. Now that's what happens when linebackers plug. The end is clearly inside of our tackle, so the runner should take the ball to the top. He should run off the tight end just like he did. Now, we back here don't know that. We're still trying to cut it right tackle. We're trying to cut it right guard. And the keeper is faking keeper out, the quarterback out the back edge. Now, his read said, 92 said, Reggie White jumped out. Gilbert Brown jumped out. The backside cutters are cut down, and he runs down the pipe. Now, to me, that's football play right there. Of all the ones I've seen, I like that the best because it's consistent. I mean, everything there is a clean 4-5-6, 4-5-6. Let it happen. You know, then go to the passing game. Run it off of what you believe in the passing game.
So I love the clip. You can just imagine Gibbs being the type of coach just tearing ass into offensive linemen, not giving an F and just going at him. And that's just how you kind of picture offensive line coaches. And the way he talked, the way he speaks, like I picture all offensive line coaches like that. I don't know what it is, but it does just set in my mind. But you can get a feel for that. How they would try to get to the top side there on those cuts. You could feel the backside guys cut. And this thing was absolutely unstoppable for a couple of year period. I mean, if Terrell Davis didn't go down with a career-ending injury on his knee, might have been one of the all-time greats within this offense because he was such a perfect, explosive type of back. I mean, he is the ideal archetype back here for this scheme to make it work. A guy with a little bit of extra size than your normal backs will have. A guy with some really great explosion, a great burst and speed, can fight through arm tackles, doesn't have to have a lot of moves, doesn't have to have a great amount of, I would say, necessarily even vision necessarily, because like you saw him and as he was talking to you on that clip, you know, you've got to live with this decision. The guy goes here, you got to live with that as a choice. You got to understand that that's what you're giving him a couple of select options, and you're kind of cutting half of the offensive line off when you're asking this guy to do this on this, where you either go here, here, or here. That's it. It's really simplified down for you, and we want you to get there fast. A lot of what's happening here on the outside zone is you're taking advantage of how the defensive lineman plays it. So he talked about the Reggie White play there where Reggie White jumped out. Gilbert Brown jumped out. It means they kind of overset a little bit wide, anticipating that wide zone more than they should. And this is why you tell the running back to be robotic and to go fast and to hit it hard and to make a quick decision. Because what you're taking advantage of is the lineman moving himself out of position. It's not necessarily the offensive lineman having driven him off the ball. It's the defensive lineman takes 2 lateral steps too hard in the wrong direction, and then you use that momentum against him. And you just sort of pin him out of the play at that point by your technique. But it's heavily technique driven. It's not just simply about you just taking guys off the line of scrimmage. You still got to do that. I mean, every offensive lineman is going to have to do that to some degree. But you're trying to kind of catch these guys making a mistake, taking a wrong step, if you were, and then letting the running back read off the back of it. So Shanahan has some really great success here with Gibbs. They have the nice run there. It does kind of pitter out as the NFL, as it always does on this stuff. NFL catches up. Defenses are going to catch up. They're going to adjust. They're going to get lighter. They're going to get faster at that time to kind of accommodate against these Denver Bronco offensive lines. Shanahan's got to move on. He goes out to the Washington Commanders at this point, or I guess they're the Redskins at this time. And then we get the next iteration that's brought into effect here. And the next iteration that's brought into effect is going to be the RG3 effect. Robert Griffin III comes out of Baylor as a Heisman Award winner and a guy that is not really super advanced as a quarterback at this time in being able to do quarterback type things. I don't think he had gotten one under snap in his whole college career. So you were going to have to kind of teach him from the ground up on a lot of that stuff. What they did, and what a lot of smart coaching staffs are trying to do more and more so now with these kind of guys to get some effectiveness out of them immediately, is that you essentially start to onboard a lot of their college offense into what you're doing. And so pistol look, pistol read formations for the Washington Redskins at that time was a very big part of their offense. I believe even up until this point right now, there are more yards off of play action in that year with RG3, mainly out of the pistol look, than any modern offense. Their almost whole offense was working off of the play action game. Outside zone was still a heavy part of what they were doing, but the big adjustment really brought in at this time by Mike Shanahan was the keeping of the quarterback in that element of things. So really before that, you'd never run a read option with the quarterback keeping the ball. And what was happening is those edges were starting to really get down into those A-gap runs because they knew the quarterback wouldn't keep in those situations. But in RG3, you had a guy that was like a running back with the ball in his hands. So now he could put that thing in the gut into the last minute, pull it away, and then go and punish that edge off. And now you had all these edges for about a 5-year period that had to relearn how to essentially play the read option game, how to really key on where the ball's at, how to make sure that they're keeping themselves clean if the quarterback does keep the ball to the outside. And we've still even seen now, there are still quarterbacks like a Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Jaden Daniels that can be very effective still with this. It's a very difficult adjustment that you put on defenses here because you're essentially giving them one extra guy that they don't have a body for, and in that quarterback that you didn't typically have to account for. So all the wide zone stuff, all the passing attack, I would say a lot of the passing attack has remained as much as anything the same. I would almost estimate in a lot of ways that it's been the running of the ball that's really been the thing that's changed throughout the years in this West Coast offense. The passing attack and the precision of the passing attack, the guys running the routes exactly. Mike Holmgren at one time had to let go of a Joey Galloway because Joey Galloway would be kind of a Coach Carroll kind of receiver, right? Like, I don't need you, right? You're a freak show. You're just go get open, take the top off the defense, go run. But with Mike Holmgren, he would have his receivers run an exact number of steps on given routes. You're going to run this post route. I want it to be 9 yards, and then I want it to be 9 steps, and on the 10th step, you're cutting into the post at the stem of the route. And with Joey, that was really hard to have to learn to count my steps as I'm through the running of the route. That's just, I'm thinking about that rather than just thinking about getting open. And for some receivers, it doesn't always, sync up. Like with a lot of running backs, asking them to play like robots doesn't always make them super happy and loving playing in the system. Some running backs, it sets them free. They don't have to think as much. They can understand it's these 3 options and then go. This is one of the reasons I think Kenneth Walker will be really aided by this, is it's those guys that maybe, eyes get too big, everything's a big play, they have too much freelance, too much freedom to be able to break the play off in any direction they want, and that can sometimes lead them to turning down what is a nice hole that is actually there for them to take, a 5, 6, 7 yard gain, because this offense is going to be built upon getting positive gains on your rushing downs, not any penetration, getting your 3, your 4, your 5 yards in a cloud of dust. Gibbs was talking a little bit about that on his breakdown there. So you have Shanahan, brings in Mike Shanahan at this time, does a little bit more of the read option stuff. All of the passing attacks remain the same, still heavily predominantly upon the outside zone game. And then we get now to the next iteration of this, of course, which is going to be Kyle Shanahan coming into play and what he did with the Niners and what he's now done to take this system into the next stage, the next iteration, because all of that other stuff prior still built in here. A little bit less of the read option game. He was certainly back on it when he had Trey Lance there for a hot minute, but Jimmy Garoppolo, Brock Purdy, they're not really built to be able to run as much of the read option game. So, Kyle has gone away from that. I think he would go right back to it if he had a quarterback that could kind of run it, but he's just leaned into what these guys do good and where their skill set, really is at. Now with Kyle Shanahan, the place that, he's really made an adjustment, I would say, in what he's done is, number one, there is the necessary adjustment. And we saw with Tom Cable that he really struggled, the Seahawks former offensive line coach, to roll with these punches. Because first what the NFL did to slow this down with the Broncos is they said, okay, look, you can't cut on the backside to the back of the leg. So if the defender's running lateral and you drive that cut to the back of the leg, that's going to be a penalty. You can still cut backside, but you just can't cut to the back of the leg. Then when Cable was here, 13, 14, I think, the NFL and the defensive players were really complaining about these cut blocks because it was just bad on their knees. And so then they just removed the cut blocks on the backside completely. And so now you have to find that extra adjustment you can kind of make, and that was a big part of it. It was the 1-2 punch. It was the outside zone stretch to stretch your defensively, and then backside we're cutting you to create that alt angle that we could go down if we have to, kind of the emergency escape, if everything gets clogged up to the front side, if the defense over pursues, if you were. Now that's gone, and that's away here with Kyle Shanahan. And how is he going to adjust? Well, I think what he's really done by and large is utilize the motion-based stuff. Pre-snap adjustments, and you're starting guys here, and then they adjust back over here, and it turns into this. Pre-snap motion this way. He started to use a lot of the fly sweep with Deebo Samuel at that time. The fly sweep was a methodology at that point to then have the linebackers move prior to the snap. You run the fly sweep, man. You can manipulate the linebackers' pre-snap motion. And a lot of times, you're moving them with the fly sweep guy to run those couple of steps. And yeah, they're moving 2 steps this way, but a lot of times you're just moving them 2 steps in order so that, let's say you have a combo block with the guard in the center, the guard's got to get down to the linebacker there. Well, if the linebacker's here and I got to get down to him, I'm not likely to hit him, especially if the run play is going this way. But if the fly sweep goes like this and you bring that linebacker here and now he's heads up with me, squared up with me, I can hit that combo block with the center on the nose tackle, and then I can quickly, easily have a straight line path to then getting down to that linebacker on the second level and getting a hat on him. So you had the fly sweep to where you could give him the fly sweep. That's why the linebackers had to move, is they had to play it legitimately, like this guy might get the ball. We've got to move those couple steps over from where we want to be. We came out of the huddle, we set up, here's where we want to be prior to the snap. They've manipulated us to have to go here now, and the manipulation has got kind of two layers deep on it. It could be the manipulation to give it to Deebo. If they don't move, you can give it to Deebo, and he's got a little bit of a freer path there on the fly sweep. Or it could be that you're just trying to come to front side and you're manipulating the linebackers to kind of move them up off that spot there and be able to go with that. So a lot of the fly sweep stuff, a lot of the pre-snap motion and trying to get defenses essentially prior to the snap, looking here, looking there, looking up, looking down. Okay, you got this guy here, getting them to do a lot of pointing, and okay, he's over here, and they're shuffling, and they're doing anything but just simply locking in on what the offense is doing prior to the snap, really getting a pre-snap read that's true and clear, and then being able to execute that pre-snap read post-snap very easily and fluidly. So this is his adjustment that he's mainly brought in there. He's a hell of a coach. In addition to that, very creative in his approach. He'll throw some trick plays in there. He's a guy that's always kind of moving a little bit of that ball forward in his own way here a little bit. It'll be interesting to see what they do this upcoming season. There's no more real Deebo Samuel to kind of use in that role if they're going to try to make Parasol that guy there. But this is where the offense is kind of adjusted too. There's another spot that he has adjusted in his own time, I would say, there now, and this has been over the last couple of years, the next iteration of the adjustment, and that is going to be getting back to the inside game aspect of this. So much of this offense has been wide zone, wide zone, wide zone, and it's not that he wouldn't utilize at times trying to hit the inside runs, but now there's much more of a predominance within this offense. LaFleur, for instance, in Green Bay, I feel like is a little bit more heavier built into this direction of things, where he's going to try and do what he can to hit the inside runs a little bit more than the outside runs. He just seems like he leans into that stuff a little bit more. But we've seen Shanahan do this now a little bit more as well. And the reason being is that you've got teams now starting to go a little bit lighter on their defensive fronts, of course. And with them going a little bit lighter on the defensive fronts, with them stretching those defensive fronts out, we've talked about this here with our own defensive front. We'll go wide 9, and we'll go with the 1 and the 3 tech inside. And so you get a lot of stretching of your defensive line out at that point, and you've got these natural gaps that exist within there. So there has been a little bit of an adjustment with Shanahan going to a little bit of the inside runs now to kind of take advantage of that. You have that width already that's naturally there on the formation, and then now you've got the natural gaps and creases that are there that just exist because of the alignment of the defense, and it really tests defenses to play sound gap integrity to be able to defend that run. So the inside runs are now coming, and a lot of the inside runs will come off of the outside zone look. So it's called, I think they call it 14 Susie is the name of it. But essentially what it is that you make everything on the play look like an outside zone in how you run it from the first couple of steps post-snap to you only then turn it into an A-gap run, a power run, once the running back has the ball. So everything's made to look outside zone, then the running back gets the ball, and then he just hammers that thing right up through the middle and takes it and goes. So there's been some little adjustments that Kyle's been able to bring in there, even from where he started there with the Niners, initially. And then this brings us to Kubiak. Kubiak is, of course, a direct disciple of Mr. Shanahan and what he does and how he does it as well. There is, I think, a very key difference between Kubiak and Shanahan. And it's really as much as I think the main own key difference. I think with Kubiak, he comes a little bit from his father's tree on this one a little bit. And Gary Kubiak, who served under Mike Shanahan as his offensive coordinator, when he went to the Texans, yes, there's still the West Coast kind of tenets within there, but a lot of the West Coast tenets have within there a little bit of leaning towards throwing short and intermediate, and that's where you're going to essentially always kind of live, and that you'll occasionally get a deep throw out there. With the Niners, for instance, I think that they just kind of at times took advantage of having Jerry Rice as much as anything out there. It wasn't as much a centerpiece of what they did. But I would offer, if you look at even an Andy Reid, Philadelphia Eagle teams, there wasn't always the big deep threat over the top. That wasn't always the biggest, most important aspect of making their offense run. And I think even with the Niners right now, who has been their deep threat? Brandon Ayuk's more of a route runner. Debo, more of the gadget guy, short intermediate kind of guy. Juwan Jennings, kind of a possession intermediate route runner is sort of kind of how he does it. You just didn't lean as much of that into the Shanahan offense. It wasn't as much of a big care. I think even back in the day in the Broncos, Jimmy Smith, great receiver, tremendously productive in his career. I don't know if I would have ever called him a pure deep threat necessarily. And Ed McCaffrey was a hell of a receiver himself, father of Christian McCaffrey, but he was a big possession guy. So what I think you see with Kubiak and what he's done that stands out to me in watching the tape of the Saints last year especially, is he's cut from that cloth of his father that he wants to be much more aggressive and he wants to be able to look to push those plays down the field. Because what teams are going to do with this offense is they're going to get keyed in on those shorter routes. You've got JSN and Cooper Kupp that you're going to be running out on the field a lot, which means teams are going to really want to squish down on those short routes and take that away from them. They're going to also look at those two guys and say, oh, well, we got two guys here that aren't really take the top off the defense style of players, so we can afford to take this risk and squish down on these shorter routes and remove that off the table. I would say you're going to be a little risky if you're going to do that with JSN, because maybe the best route that JSN ran last year was the corner route out of the slot. I mean, he was devastating on that route. So if you're going to try to do that, good luck. But Kubiak is absolutely going to be able to feature JSN on some of those routes because he just has it baked a little bit more within his offensive playbook, I think, than you're going to tend to get with the Shanahan style of playbook on this. This is his adjustment a little bit. It's a little bit of his father's adjustment because it was partly, I think, his father taking advantage of having Andre Johnson with the Texans at that time. And Andre Johnson was just this freak show he was kind of Julio Jones before Julio Jones a little bit. And so you really wanted to utilize that deep essence of what he brought. And so they would build that a little bit more in how they would attack that particular offense. And Klint Kubiak has definitely taken that and implemented that into what he wants to do. So you're still getting all of the styling of the outside zone, the precision of the passing-based attack. You're going to be getting the pre-snap motion and movement in order to try to confuse defenses and get them shuffling and changing and moving and trying to communicate. You here, you're there, you're over there, get to him here. Oh, he's there. It's going outside there. No, it's going over here. You're getting him into that kind of state of mind. But then you add on top of it a little bit more heavier onus upon trying to hit some of the deep stuff down the field and leaning on that as well within this particular playbook and how it's designed. It's a really fun offense. There's no reason it can't be also super explosive and highly productive. I have been saying that I do believe that the defense is going to be where this team's going to have to kind of hang its hat on, that they've got to kind of lead the way. But it doesn't mean that the offense can't also be tremendously productive and effective in what they've done. They've got a lot of talent on that side of the field. They've got talent well suited to do this. JSN, Cooper Kupp being real pure route runners and how they go, that fits well. This is an offense that likes pure route runners. They're going to run things precisely, not loosely. They aren't going to round routes off, but are going to cut them like they were cutting on a dime. That's the kind of players that you need in this offense for it to make it work. Doesn't mean it can't take on the freak show wide receivers. Doesn't mean that Terrell Owens doesn't go to the Philadelphia Eagles and now an offense that once really wasn't leaning on much of trying to hit the ball deep down the field now is really building a lot of that in because we got Terrell Owens. Let's go. Let's do that. So it's one that you certainly, if you get the right talent in here, you can do it, but it also can get by without absolutely having to have that game-changing talent out on the outside too. And there's been plenty of offenses that has been the case. But this will be a fun offense for our Seattle Seahawks. I'm really looking forward to watching the West Coast offense brought back into play because it's so detail-driven, because it doesn't do away with the details. It understands that there's value within the details. And if you stack enough of these details and things together, you're going to have a well-honed offense. And that's what it's about. It's about slowly building it up piece by piece, but being completely detail-driven in what you do. It isn't just land the block. It's land the block in the way that we coach you to land it so we can break this play up as big as we want to go break it, not merely get by on it. But you guys let me know. Are you as hyped up as I am for this West Coast offense? Are you guys thinking this thing is going to be able to find some footing pretty quickly? When you do look at Kubiak, he's had 2 stops, Minnesota Vikings, and then he just had this Saints stop here as an offensive coordinator. He was good in both stops. He was good in both stops immediately. And in the Saints one, as I showed last week, the kind of turnaround he got alone in the ground game, considering he lost half his offense halfway into the year, pretty damn impressive to me. Pretty noteworthy to me that he got that done instantaneously. And as I think we saw with Mike McDonald, as you get these coaches that have been in a couple of places and had a couple of different points of success and have had to teach their scheme and boom, boom, get it in, get it, boom, boom, get it in, and that they get faster and faster at being able to implement it. Mike McDonald last year came in here to Seattle, and we know with his first stop in Baltimore, it took him 10 games for a defense that he was taking over a like defense for in Wink Martindale. It took 10 games. But yet last year, we kind of saw him almost at times feel like he was starting to speed up a bit of that process, almost like he's getting better, having had the track record of teaching the defense in Baltimore, having track record of teaching the defense in Michigan. Now you start to get just a little bit smarter in your ability to get your processes applied and speed up that teaching process on these guys. And hopefully that can be the case this year. Because if this offense can be effective, if this offense can find some sure footing and consistency, we know the defense is going to be there. We know the special team is going to be there. It comes in and does its part. That would be absolutely tremendous. Tremendous. But you guys, let me know what you guys think. You guys hyped up on this offense, or is there a different offense out there that you're liking a little bit more? Andy Reid out there has kind of grown and evolved the offense at times here to build in a little bit more of the air raid concepts into what he does there. He's been very creative in his constant evolution there through the many years of being a head coach out there. There's so many different ways these coaches can kind of go with this style of offense. But the bones of it, the structure of it, the spine of it, from Bill Walsh, still do remain the same to this day. That you can still find plays within what they called it back in the day the Niners did, that those plays still exist in every West Coast offensive playbook in this game. And there's something cool in that. There's a timelessness to the brilliance of what Bill Walsh created. Let's see where you guys are at today. Hope you guys are having a good one. Brian Myers, good to see you. HHG, what's up? What's up? See where my people's at today. Misfit says, like a... You guys like an Easley shirt? Let's go, man. Jonas Doyle says, my dad was the artist that created that poster on your t-shirt. He did a hell of a job, my man. I'm going to get a couple of these other ones done. We got a couple of the 81s. I don't know. NFL needs to bring these back, by the way. They need to bring back these, like, get the players shot in some cool, not just something that's like generalized too, but it's actually like kind of specific to like this background where he's on the streets and he's having to wear his super leather jacket and beat people up. And it's red behind him because of all the blood. It's super dramatic. I had to make this one as a custom one, so I don't actually sell these. I just built it on my shop and then just printed and go. So I wish I could sell these out to you guys. I would, but then they'd come after me in a big way if I did. I just decided I want to make one. Jonah says, when you see Wes Welker or Julian Love bounce on the snap at the line of scrimmage, then release it exactly what you're describing. Yes, sir. Everything's done with a very much a purposeful nature of it, even when it doesn't look like that in this offense at times. And the timing of everything is so very key. It goes back to a Steve Young quote, and we've had, undersized quarterbacks here that have had at times be a Russell or be a Kyler Murray, for instance, that look, it's not their fault. They're just a little bit smaller, can't see sometimes over the top of the offensive lineman. It's hard for them to make those throws through the middle of the field. And they'd ask Steve Young about it. And they'd say, Steve, you're only about 6'1". You got all these linemen 6'4", 6'5". How do you see over the top when you're throwing these like slant routes to Jerry Rice? And he would say, I can't see Jerry breaking open. I've worked with him on the practice field so often that I know exactly where he's going to be on the spot, and I throw to the spot. And to me, it's a pretty stunning quote from a guy that was a Hall of Fame quarterback that was an MVP in this league, to say, I couldn't see it. I threw it blind. I threw it to a spot. And I thought it also kind of summed up in a big way, that kind of quote, just what this offense is a bit about. You're throwing with anticipation. You're not waiting to see it open. You're not waiting a beat late. It's to be on time. It's to be right at the spot. Hell, it's even the pass itself is to be in a specific place. Walsh would talk about all the time. Don't put it too far out front. Don't put it behind them. Make sure it's on the numbers. Make sure you're throwing it to a place to where they're catching and they can quickly then turn into a runner, because, of course, yak is a big part of this offense. Martin Lawrence, Brando, just how suited to running the West Coast offense do you think our roster is, given the fact that coaches may or will try to put their own spin on it? I think the offense is really well suited for this right now, Martin. The offensive line is going to be the big part of this, I think, being that how far forward can they come? If it's a league worst kind of unit, once again, then we're not going to get this rocket off the ground. If they can become a league average kind of unit, you've got the rest of the talent around to make that work. From the depth at receiver and tight end in totality, what you have, understanding that it's an offense that Martin is going to try to pepper the ball around the field. It's not looking to target one or two guys and make them highly targeted. It's going to work the ball all the way around the field. So having a cacophony of pass catchers is mighty helpful. And you can utilize that in this offense and find effectiveness. You got 3-4 backs stacked up that are fairly good quality in order to get what you need to get out of the ground game. You've got offensive linemen that are athletic. Charles Cross, Gray Zabel, Abraham Lucas, even Bradford, all very much athletic, kind of freakish guys, which still work really well with this outside zone. Having guys that can get out to the reach blocks, that can move laterally out in space, is going to be highly beneficial in this offense. So I think we're pretty well suited up. It's not maybe purified to that level of things, Martin, but I think that this roster this year is much, much more further along towards making that happen versus if you inherited last year's roster and the way that would look. Because there's a lot of mismatches. I don't think, for instance, DK Metcalf is a great receiver to be put into this West Coast style of offense. I think you're kind of taking away some of the things that he does at his best and putting him into what he does limited. Tyler Lockett, this is an offense heavily built upon yak, run after the catch. Not really Tyler Lockett's game, is it? So more last year, I think you were kind of in that position than it is the case this year. But it is still a bit of a work in progress to getting there fully. And specifically, Martin, I'd say the offensive line. Misfit, I wonder if the hitch incorporated is quarterback specific and that the wide receiver adapts to whichever quarterback it is inherent with the offense. It kind of depends on the play call, Misfit. It tends to just be, if you have a 3-step drop, but then you're too quick on the third step because the receiver's not gotten to the full, let's say it's a slant route. He needs the extra step. You put the hitch on there. Or it's a post route. You need to put the hitch on there. It could be a 5-step drop with the hitch. It's very much just depends on the exact kind of route you're running. And it's all the way Bill talked about it. It was all just based upon mainly with the hitch to give the receiver the exact time to be where he needs to be at. That essentially if that quarterback tries to throw that a little early, it's just a hair early. He's not come out of the break. You want it at the right exact time. Exact time. Jonah says you could argue we were shifting the personnel for the last 2 seasons, so we should be mostly there for the scheme and fit and personnel. I'd agree with that. Yeah, Jonas, by and large, it's basically there. I completely agree with that. You got a little bit of, but like you could use we'll see if Sundell's going to be there, but an Olotimi, you don't have necessarily the most athletic center there to make it roll there. We've got to get the line to settle down to make it happen, but you got the parts and pieces that make this thing go. Damn the hitches. AJG, Pete wanted Shanahan. He wanted Gibbs. Him and Gibbs were really good friends. Really, really good friends. So, it is kind of interesting to think of Gibbs coming here, though, with kind of positive Pete and the way that he rolled in his style with that, to think of how that would roll with, Gibbs tearing into guys' ass. Is there a room for a full football spin before every pass, a la Jay DeHart? Definitely a bunch of cut blocks on the back end, Kendrick. That's how it was definitely a big part of it. Oh, I saw that. We do have throwback license plate in Seattle. I want to see how much they're charging for that, though. They're going to just go overboard on it. Dogzilla, hey, how well did our O-line do trying to block wide zone last year? Well, we were best blocking gap last year, Dogzilla. Gap runs were definitely the best. You had some zone you ran, so there was some of that peppered in there where you found some success at it. I think the big issue when we come down to last year and running the ball, just Dogzilla goes to, commitment. You're going to throw the ball 67, 68% of the time. If you don't stay committed to running the ball, it's going to be hard to run the ball. And I think Grubb in a lot of games just kind of sort of forgot about it, got away from it. Some of it, you just didn't have good players on the offensive line. I mean, a Laken Tomlinson, for instance, is not a guy at this point in his career that's going to be able to get to much as far as outside zone blocks or getting to the second level. That was why I didn't really like that signing at the time. It's like, look, you're trying to get more mobile offensive linemen. You don't have it here. You rocked Oluwatimi. He's not the most athletic center. Yeah, I mean, we did it okay, I think, Dogzilla, but you had some reasons for why it held you up that I think go beyond just the personnel not being able to do it. I think Grubb really was just kind of all over the place, throwing spaghetti up at the wall and seeing what stick. And even then he wouldn't go with what stuck. So that says, isn't any offense success based off O-line performance heavily? I think that's probably a pretty fair way of looking at it, yeah. I think that's definitely the case, Seth, for sure when it comes to running back. I think it's probably almost as much the case when it comes to quarterbacks. There's probably some quarterbacks that can get around that and work around that depending on their skill set. But in general terms, I think that's right. Seattle Boom Shakalaka. What's up, man? It's good to see you. I love the old 80s, 90s posters. My 5th grade teacher's classroom was filled with them. I did too, man. I don't know why the NFL doesn't do that stuff no more. They look badass. Costa Coast Brothers of posters. Is that what they were, Brian? Okay. I got to get a couple of others. I know there's like a Kurt Warner one. I know there's a Largent one I could get made up. Dogzilla, will Sam do well in this offense? He will. And he's coming from essentially this like offense with the Vikings. Vikings are running their own kind of basically iteration of this very same thing. Sam is really good when you give him scripted stuff. He can work off script, so he's not completely a blind man when you essentially don't let him, when it's not easy peasy in front of him. It's just the key is that when you make it easy peasy in front of him, he can execute it really, really well. And so, yeah, he is a very good fit. He's got a big arm. He's got the mobility. I mean, the mobility is a big one because on outside zone runs, you've got to haul your ass out there to play action fake it. And then you have to have the mobility to curl it back around the other way. And so he's got those. He's got the big arm to make every throw in the book that you need him to make. And so he is very well suited here into this offense. In fact, this is an offense in a lot of ways that kind of can tend to protect Sam from the worst version of himself. It's not that it's, not impossible to go get the worst version of himself. We saw that in the final Rams game. You can still get him to that place, but it just has a tendency to lean him into the other direction of it, to lean him towards success, as long as he, of course, has the supporting cast around him to make it work. But you saw this a lot in the Carolina Panthers game at home that they beat us in a couple of years ago with Sam Darnold, where he didn't have to make a ton of throws, made enough throws, was smart in his decision-making, used his legs when he needed to. And the scripted throws he had up, he completed and made them happen. And they got the dub in that game. And so, you can absolutely see him be successful in this kind of environment in this way. Brian says, I might still have my Boz poster in the storage. Let's go. You can't throw that one away, Brian. Ricky says, Kubiak is McDonald's guy. This offense and defense will complement each other really well, and it will hinge on execution. Both sides of the ball will be big on confusion and disguising. 100%, Ricky. 100%. And both these coaches are very smart in understanding that you need to take advantage of the advantages that exist everywhere. Not partially some of them, not just a here and there, but everywhere that you can. And pre-snap is a place that both of these two coordinators, you're right, be it either McDonald, I know he's a head coach, but like a coordinator in thought, or Kubiak, is that they want pre-snap to get you into a state of confusion. They want you to have no idea about what they're doing post-snap. And you would think that this would be pretty much like a no-duh. Every team does that, right? I don't know that that's the case. I think sometimes you got to pick what you want to do good and what you want to try to put at the forefront of things. I think a lot of teams will be less worried about that. Then what you see is what you get. Well, we're just going to be better than you. There's a lot of coaches that think that way too. Yeah, protect him, Misfit, and he'll enjoy success with Darnold. Protect him, he will execute this offense. Don't protect him, over time he's going to get battered, beaten down, and you're going to get a shell of the Darnold that you got at the start of the season. It is as much the key, I think, as anything else. 157 for the car, 209 for the truck. I guess that's fair. I mean, 157 is a little bit up there, but I guess that's fair. I think they do look pretty sweet. Ricky says, why is Geno being ranked higher now amongst his peers once he left Seattle? Is the NFL beef with the Seahawks a real thing? I think Allen buying the Seahawks, keeping them from going to LA, pissed the NFL off. It might have. It might have on that. I think it's funny too, Ricky. Geno is, we struggled here for the first couple of years here to get him any sort of like love from the national media at all. And everybody just kind of just threw shade at him constantly. And then the second he leaves, now everybody's loving him up. And you can't help but think, well, you're going to Vegas, you're moving out of the Seattle environment. You guys don't really pay much attention to us anyway. It does feel a little bit of a kind of an outcropping of that. Like this is sort of an extension of that, you guys don't pay attention to us as much. And I get where people are coming from. I think that there's a level of fact to this. And it's one that I've said for a long time, this, Ricky, where it's like, there's not a lot we can kind of do about this, where there's a lot of the country that just feels like we're in Southern Alaska. And it's going to make people kind of forget about us a little bit at times. And that it's an East Coast driven league, Southern driven league. And that's kind of the, a bit of the nature of the beast of that a bit. But Geno's not suddenly remarkably gotten better from leaving here to go into the Raiders. But it is probably just an example of fact he should have been given the love prior to this year and recognized that it shouldn't have taken this long for people to see it. After year one of him being in as a starter, people should have recognized what he was doing and what he was accomplishing. But Geno also was a guy that just had, for a lot of people, that sort of blind spot on him to where they just they just couldn't get on board with him no matter what. It's kind of weird to see at times. Dream says he did pretty well under pressure. I don't think he'll be able to sustain that success under pressure, but he's not a terrible like a lot of people think. Correct, Dreams. Yeah, I think the narrative out there is that if you get any kind of pressure on a Darnold, he sinks. And I would more say it's not that. It's more of just, if you have him consistently game after game over a stretch of some games, really having to deal with that pressure over a heavy amount, that's where you're going to get the, I see ghosts, I'm getting rattled, I'm not saying things clearly, I'm getting a little bit jumpy in the pocket. That's where you get that worst version of Darnold, but you have to drive to get there. It doesn't happen immediately. He can get through a couple games of bad pressure and still excel in those environments. But I think that the place that stands out is that he will have a bit of a tendency to hold the ball, and that means you want your pass protection hold up if you're holding the ball. He's fearless in the pocket in that way. He's tough as hell in that way. That's good. But he, I think, had 3.6 was his average holding the ball time last year. I mean, those are kind of Russell Wilson numbers as far as how long he was holding the ball in the pocket. Geno Smith last year was 2.82 seconds on average in the pocket. And so that may not seem like a big difference. That's a huge difference. I think 6 or something is going to probably lead the league. Like that'll be number one. So 282 ain't far off of that. And so can Sam be as effective averaging at 282 versus the 306 he was given? Because that's the one stat between the Vikings and us, I think, that will be remarkably different this year, one to the other. You're not going to have quite that amount of time to be able to sit back in the pocket and kind of assess things with it. But no, Dreams, he's fine. He can deal with pressure. There's plenty of snaps last year of him working off and ad-libbing and navigating through the pocket and making a smart decision. For sure. Ricky says, "Wow, Southern Alaska, laughing out loud." It's a quote. I'm pulling the quote, Ricky, from Sean Springs. So Sean Springs was the guy that said this. He was number 1 overall pick here, played with us for years. Then he goes and signs with the Washington Redskins at that time, and he's like, "Oh, it's great to get out of Southern Alaska." And it kind of stood out to me. I was like, wow, that's really how they think. Even the guy that played here kind of thinks like that about this place. And it does stand out when you think about the United States put on Europe, like all of the United States fits, well past into Europe and how big that is. I mean, we're a really big country, and you have 3 time zones and 3 hours of difference and all that. You'd like to have those people be like, look, like reporters. I mean, I've thought about this with the Ricky, with the voting. We only have one MVP in our history, and he had to be a record setter to get that MVP. Russell Wilson never got an MVP vote. These East Coast voters just don't watch all of our games. And all of this is just kind of is an extension of that. And it does suck a little bit, but it's also it's the reality of things, and it's not changing anytime soon. Jonas says, "I remember when we shut out the Eagles in Philly with Ricky Waters and Sean was riding the bike on the sideline." That's right. That's right. I think that was Sean's first year there, Jonas. They definitely worked in Sean kind of slowly. Different era at that time. You draft a running back in the first round, he is your starter day one. A much different era at that point where Ricky was still going to be the starter. Dreams, with the new O-line in Benton, I have hope we improve that 2.5 wins. I like it, Dreams. I can see it, man. I can definitely see it. I think that's very feasible, especially with our schedule. Fine time. That's right, Kendrick. 5 time zones with Hawaii. Hawaii's even more brutal. I've lived out there, and boy, you talk about feeling like you're in a different world from where they're at on the East Coast out there. Some people, it's kind of brutal too, Kendrick. There'll be people out in Hawaii that are remote workers, and they remote work out of New York. So they have to get up at 3 a.m. to start their day. Martin, one of our, out of our running backs, who would suit this offense best and who doesn't really suit? I've got a feeling that Kenny McIntosh will be a sneaky good without getting loads of chunk plays. What I would say historically is kind of the general lean. I think that this is an offensive system that's had a lot of different running backs that have been able to make it work. So I would say that, Martin. But if you go back to kind of what I think is really the best thing at the end of the day, it's a back that's going to have a little bit more weight. If the average running back now today is kind of more around into that 210 pounds, it's an offense that's going to like a back that's 220, 225. It's going to want a guy that can give you a 4.4 kind of 40, that can give you the real fast 10-yard split, like a 1.51, 1.52 10-yard split. So I got a little bit of the extra size. I've got the burst, and then I've got the speed. Those would be really the 3 main components I think you're looking for the running back in this system, where I think there are other systems, Martin, where it might be, I'm looking for the guy that can break tackles. I'm looking for the guy with top-end vision. I don't think that these are going to be as much the thing that you're as worried about. Walker is the guy that fits best to me on this, Martin, because I think that he's the fast, he's got the speed and the burst. Maybe doesn't quite have the extra size. That's where he's lacking. And I would offer, Martin, that every running back on this roster none of them is quite an exact pure fit. Every one of them, you can kind of look at some part of their game and say, this thing is missing. Charbonnet, do you have the burst? I think that kind of remains to be seen there. I think he's a little bit more of a build-up speed kind of guy in how he does what he does. He's got good top-end speed, but I just don't know if his initial 10-yard burst stuff on the field, not how he tested, but what you see from on the field is quite what you look for in running backs in the system. Walker missing maybe just a little bit of size. McIntosh missing just a little bit of speed and just a little bit of size. So there's not a pure fit one there, Martin. Walker's the best of them. All of them work within this offense. All of them are definitely can make it work and find the best years of their career. Every one of the running backs on this roster can find the best years of their career this season. But is there a real purified fit? Not necessarily. Terrell Davis, the Broncos, a Clinton Portis with the Broncos before he gets traded to Washington, Alfred Morris with the Commanders. You look at the Niner running backs that have come through, Matt Breida, Raheem Mostert. I know Christian McCaffrey's a little bit of kind of the size of a Walker. That's where I say there can be different guys that make it work in different ways. But that there is that kind of bigger explosive back that's really worked well within this offense. And that's the one that you probably want to most, lean towards if you can find that guy. Misfit, I want an NFL draft in Seattle. I would too, man. We got to sell them on that winter weather, though. But hell, why can't we have it? Phoebe B, did you watch the Gary Payton interview? I didn't. I did not. Boy, it sure hurt yesterday watching having the Thunder win the championship, man. That stung. That just stung. Ricky Waters was great, Misfit. Real fun running back. That's the kind of running back, too, that you love, where just every run he would run with his life on the line. I mean, he was going to give you everything he got. Alpha sucks at mock drafts. I'm more excited for this preseason than I've ever been about a preseason before. Damian Martinez' legacy preseason will not be forgotten. No, it won't. We only know about the legend of Damian Martinez preseason. It's unstoppable. I'll check out that interview, though, Phoebe. I will. And Martinez will be good back. He will. He's missing just a little bit of that speed burst. But boy, like Jonas, you say, he's a violent runner. Violent runners work in the system too. McIntosh is violent too. Yeah. McIntosh was a low-key, our most effective runner last year. I think he only ended up with like 30 carries or something, but the guy averaged 5.2 yards per carry last season. You got a very nice running backfield right now as it's set up. You got some depth here to make this thing work. That is for sure. That is for sure. All right, we'll put a button on this one here today. If you guys can do me that favor, hit that like button. You guys know I do appreciate it. If you guys can do that for me, as it helps the channel grow, and I do thank you very much. Still got a link below here to the meetup event we're going to be having in early October, Thursday night football game, Niners and the Rams. Yeah, no Seahawks, but it's going to be an NFC West roundtable meetup down here in Southern California, out in LA. So if you want to join us on that, we're going to be getting that all set up. We are locked in for that event. There are only a few tickets remaining. I've got the link down below in the section. $100 deposit gets you in. $300 gets you tickets to the game. We're going to do a pre-night out at the bar. We're going to do tailgating and all that good stuff. So a chance to hang with the boys, chop it up and have some fun out there. Looking forward to doing that. So we're going to be kicking that into gear here very, very, very shortly. Couple shows for you this week still lined up. We got a look at Christian Haynes this week on, I think we're doing that on Wednesday. We're going to be looking at Christian Haynes' rough rookie year, but we're going to find some silver linings within that rookie season. Tomorrow, we're looking at Boye Mafe. Can he take that next step? I talked about Derek Hall taking another step in his game last year. In a lot of ways, Mafe's taken already a little bit of that step in totality. He is a complete run defender. He is a complete pass rusher. But now can he take the step into stardom? Can he take that final step into stardom to not only lock us in a difference maker off the edge, but to also go and earn himself one hell of a big payday after this season? So we'll be looking at that tomorrow. We're also going to be looking at this week at some point or another. I can't decide if I'm doing Thursday or Friday yet, but we're going to be looking at what it will take for this team to get to a championship. What does a championship run look like this season? I know many of you aren't counting on it. I know many of you are hoping for it, but I'm going to actually show you in what I think in the reality of how it would play out, what a championship run kind of season would look like from your Seattle Seahawks. So be on the lookout for that. Maybe Thursday, maybe Friday. We're going to be coming up shortly here in the next couple weeks after this week, just to let you guys know, we're going to be doing a little bit of a break here on the channel for a couple week period here. I'll be getting some shorts out to you guys. We'll be getting some little videos out to you. Probably do a live stream here and there, but we're going to be dialing it back a little bit just to kind of catch our breath right before the start of the season here as we get into July. So I just wanted to prep you guys up for that as we're going to go through this month into July, and we'll keep it going, but just a little bit softly in the early part so I can get myself nice and fresh here for the upcoming season. I thank you guys for watching today. I appreciate you for doing that. Again, hit that like button if you get the chance. Sean, they could do the Mariners. They could do the draft in the Mariner Stadium. Roof can't be open. Roof can be open if it's nice. There we go. And you got the roof closed if not, right? I love it, man. Well, there'd be a great turnout there if they did it here. I'll tell you that. The city would love having the draft held there. So I'd love to see it. Misfit Waters was so adept in run or passing game and blocking, 3-tool player. Complete player all the way around. You're right. The perfect kind of 49er running back too. He came there after they had a couple guys go through there, and he came in there and he was just dynamic. Boy, was he ever. But you're right, man. Completely great at all three of those, really good at all three of those elements. Maybe not great, but really good in all three of those elements. Dreams, you go Hawks, man. Go Hawks. Need Charbazard to send a few guys to the Shadow Realm this season? I do too, man. I want a few more of those knock him off their feet hits in the open field that he can deliver. He can. He can. All right, we'll be back tomorrow, 12 o'clock, looking at Mr. Boye Mafi and whether or not he's got to level up to his game, whether he's got one more step to rock to go above, get that next level of his game, really take the top off, what that could do for this defense if he can reach that upside that he does have. I mean, this guy coming out had the length, had the size, had the explosiveness you look for grade A pass rushers. So we'll be diving into that tomorrow. But until that time, please don't you ever forget. Don't you do it. We're about to have ourselves one hell of a season, so you better not be forgetting that too hard. I know the Mariners are starting to do a little bit better, but keep in mind, Seahawks are about to do some great things. So don't you ever forget. Don't do it. Don't you dare. Go Hawks.